when you had all those black intellectuals on stage every year and everybody watched all day live on C-SPAN? Yeah, I know the one.
Let's bring them back.
Well, I am pleased to tell you that if you go to KBLA1580.com right now, you can sign up to be in the audience here in Los Angeles when we go back live on C-SPAN with a stage full of black thinkers and influencers for a historic conversation. America has never seen a stage full of black folk talking about the urgency of now. Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience. It's going down Tuesday, June 18th, 4 to 7 p.m. at the California Science Center in Exposition Park. Admission is free, but you must register at KBLA1580.com. Once we reach capacity, you'll have to watch us on C-SPAN. But if you want to be in the room when we go live from Los Angeles, Tuesday, June 18th, head to KBLA1580.com right now to reserve your seat. Caring about the climate, caring about the community. With KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
I believe up there. Hey!
Try to keep it coming. Things ain't always smooth. Oh, but I'll be alright as long as I can find the good. Yes, I will. Somehow I know that I can make it. You seem to like my style. Don't you worry, I'm gonna be around.
Live from historic Lemery Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit theTavisSmileyShow.com. That's theTavisSmileyShow.com or wherever you get your podcast and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast version of this live program at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, perennial New York Times bestselling author Walter Mosley is back to talk about his latest Easy Rollins novel, the 16th installment of Mosley's celebrated series, Farewell, Amestestein. In this particular text, Ezekiel Easy Rollins tackles a multi-layered missing persons case which features Kurt, a forensic accountant who got mixed up with mobsters running a crooked casino at the request of Kurt's ex-wife. Easy has agreed to help track him down. We will talk to Walter Mosley. I about fell out of my chair weeks ago when the book came across my desk in preparation for this conversation, realizing this was the 16th installment of the Easy Rollins mystery series. And so I look forward to Walter Mosley joining us today in our second hour. In our third hour.
The night train.
Tape on, then I watch you 3 seconds later. I got you shaking your head, dancing instead of sitting. The rhymes kick, the beat's hitting you just like a home run, slamming like a slam dunk. Ride the wave, James Brown, Dave Funk. It happened to James like it happened to me. How you think it feel to see another MC get paid? Using my rap style, and I'm playing the background. Meanwhile, I ain't with that. You can't forget that. You took my style. I'm taking it back, coming back like Return of the Jedi. Sucker MCs in the place that said I could only rock rhymes and only rock crowds, but never rock records. How you like me now?
Dr. Todd Boyd, a.k.a. the Notorious Ph.D., joins us to discuss the legacy of hip-hop and his latest book, Rappers Deluxe, How Hip-Hop Made the World. Dr. Todd Boyd joins us today in our third hour. We commence today's show talking global politics, though, with Stephen Kinzer, former New York Times foreign correspondent, who I'm honored to have on this program. There is so much to cover in this first hour regarding all kinds of global news. Stephen Kinzer, good to have you on this program, sir. How are you today?
Good. Wonderful to be with you, despite everything that's happening in the world. Sometimes I think that people like us who reflect on and analyze the world are the only ones that benefit from all this chaos, except for, of course, the arms makers.
Yeah.
So at least we're here to counter their influence.
We are
Good to have
indeed.
you.
We are indeed. It's good to have you on this program. Let me start with this. You started somewhat philosophically. Let me follow you, as I will throughout this hour, for that matter, Stephen. Broadly speaking, what is your view of what's happening in the world right now, as you put it?
How much time do we have?
I'm going to get more specific. Trust me, as we move through the hour, and that's why we have a full hour. You ain't got to talk in sound bites. But I asked that question not at all. I'm not naive in posing it. But what I'm pressing toward is that this is a very, very unique moment in global history. Say nothing of the fact I was discussing on this program weeks ago that this year there'll be millions of citizens all around the world. Never this many people in one election year going to the polls at the same time in critical races all around the world. You can't disconnect politics, of course, from war or any other issues that we'll talk about in this hour. But it seems to be a rather unique time in world history. They're going to have a field day looking back on this particular period. So before I get into the specifics, again, just broadly speaking, what do you make of the situation we find the world in right now?
Well, first of all, I certainly hope that future generations do get to the point where they're able to look back and judge what's happening at this point, and that something doesn't happen between now and then so that there aren't going to be any future generations. So here's what I see as the major dynamic now unfolding in the world. The center of global power is shifting. For about 500 years, it's been the Euro-Atlantic world. Before that, it's the area that we now call East Asia. So I think there naturally became a sense in the West, in this Euro-Atlantic world, that this was a permanent phenomenon, that we dominated and that was going to go on forever. But that's now changing. And this is not just a military and political threat for the West, but it's also a great psychological threat. It's not something for which we're psychologically prepared. That is, to live in a world that we don't dominate. So now we're in this transition period where inevitably the United States is going to be losing power, at least in a relative sense, as other countries rise. The question is whether the United States is prepared to recede into a world in which it's only one of various players and is not able or willing to impose its will on other countries, or whether it's going to go down fighting, whether it's going to insist on maintaining hegemony and primacy all over the world. And that is going to produce a tremendous amount of conflict.
Hold that thought. Now we're cooking with fish grease, as we say. We are cooking now with fish grease. That's why I asked that question. You never know where the answer is going to take you. But Stephen Kinzer has now framed the rest of this hour brilliantly. I don't need nothing else to talk about. I could just interrogate that question for the rest of the hour. Is the U.S. in this moment where the center of global power is shifting, willing to recede, or whether it's going to fight to the end to maintain the domination that it and the world has known? That is the question, as they say. We'll unpack that and a great deal more with Stephen Kinzer for the hour when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
Hey, y'all. Mona Swain here from Target's new YouTube series, My Cart is Full, where we feature Black founders and creators highlighting their connection to our community. As an actor and content creator, I love using my voice to inspire young Black women who look like me. When it comes to feeding my shine, seeing myself reflected in Black-owned and founded products at Target brings me joy. Together, we are Black Beyond Measure. Learn more at target.com/Black Beyond Measure.
Cookie wants to be a professional wrestler.
I'm Cookie Serratos and I'm 11 years old.
She also wants to win all the medals. That's why Cookie and her family make every day count, squeezing out her best with Go-Go Squeeze.
Okay, Cookie, let's break for a Go-Go Squeeze.
Go-Go Squeeze Fruit on the Go pouches are a nutritious snack made from 100% fruit with no sugar added.
Go, Cookie!
Because when you nurture your kids, you squeeze out the best in them. Squeeze out the best with Go-Go Squeeze. Not a low-calorie food. Products range from 11 to 13 grams of sugar and 60 to 70 calories per serving.
Hi, I'm Henry Winkler. My eyes are very important to me. My eyes connect me with everything I love. I loved my late father-in-law dearly. He always lit up a room, but his vision dimmed with age. He had age-related macular degeneration, or AMD. And since partnering with Apellis, I've learned there's an advanced form of dry AMD called geographic atrophy, or GA. His struggle with vision loss made me want to help others know about GA's warning signs. For some, colors appear dull or washed out. For others, hazy or blurred vision make it hard to see details, like fine print on price tags. Many have trouble seeing in the dark, making driving at night difficult. GA gets worse over time and cannot be reversed. If you think you have GA, don't wait. Treatments are available. Ask a retina specialist about FDA-approved treatments for GA and go to GAWon'tWait.com.
Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Yeah.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties. Classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
Sounds different. Huh. This is Tavis Smiley.
It is indeed Tavis Smiley with Stephen Kinzer, former New York Times foreign correspondent, just getting started in this hour. And again, there is a whole lot to get to. You've all been seeing the news over the last 24 hours that President Biden has denounced the IOC for what he calls an outrageous implication of equivalence between Israel and Hamas. He made that comment because the ICC prosecutor is seeking warrant arrests against Bibi Netanyahu in Israel and the leader of Hamas for war crimes over October 7th and Gaza. He is seeking arrest warrants for both sides in this fight. And the president of this country, Joe Biden, has said that is absolutely outrageous to imply any level of equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Bibi Netanyahu was on MSNBC. He's had some things to say about this, and so it's becoming, this story continues to grow. As we say, it has legs and has had legs for quite some time. We'll get to that and a great deal more to discuss as we move through this hour with Stephen Kinzer. But Stephen has already set the frame for the rest of the hour, and I want to just follow him and interrogate a few things with him in that regard. So let me just back this down for a second, Stephen, because you're so brilliant in your own analysis that I want to make sure that we can keep up with you. So when you suggest, I think I get what you mean by this. When you suggest, though, before I get to the question of whether or not the U.S. in the years to come is willing to recede, or whether we're going to claw and fight to the end to maintain the dominance that we've had for generations. When you say that the center of global power is shifting in the world as we have known it, shifting from what to what is my first question.
It's shifting away from the Euro-Atlantic world, what we now call NATO, or that is the United States and Western Europe. This is the part of the world that is dominated since the so-called Age of Discovery, beginning in the 15th or 16th centuries. But now the normal, pre-existing world order is reemerging. And I think future generations, if we do get there, will look back on those 500 years of Euro-Atlantic dominance of the world as a kind of parenthesis. And after a while, the balance of power shifted toward East Asia, which is where I think it is now and where I think it's going. Now, that's not necessarily bad for us. We're in this zero-sum mentality where anything that's good for other countries, particularly China or other large countries, must be bad for us because there's only a certain amount of power to be distributed in the world. This is a terrible attitude that drives us into competition in areas where it's self-defeating for all parties. So, but the United States is not used to dealing with other countries as equals. In all of our alliances, not just NATO, but all of them, we're used to being the person that gives the orders. That's our idea of an alliance. Now we're looking at a situation where we are called upon to deal with other countries as sovereign equal states. And this is something that's very new and difficult for the United States to do.
I have already noted, as I'm sure this brilliant audience has, I would call it a chord, but it may be more than just a chord, a chord of pessimism in your voice. By my count, on 2 or 3 occasions already, you have suggested in one way, shape, or form, if we get there, talking about future generations, if we get there. This audience knows, I say all the time, I am not an optimist, but I am eternally a prisoner of hope. Optimism suggests there's a particular set of facts, circumstances, conditions, Stephen, something you can see, feel, or touch that gives you reason to believe that things are going to get better. So you can see why in this particular moment, I am not an optimist. I am eternally, as I said, a prisoner of hope. I'm not a pessimist, but I hear a hint of pessimism in your voice, in your presentation about the future. Am I misreading that?
You know, I grew up at a time when people were motivated by, I think, 2 twin beliefs. One was that bit by bit, the world was getting better. There might be zigs and zags, but we were getting to a better place. And number 2, I could do something that would help this process along. Now, those may have been fantasies, but in any case, we believed them. I think it's getting a lot harder to believe those things now. So I see 2 huge looming threats out there, and I see a political system that doesn't seem able to confront them. The first one is climate change. Without cooperation among the big powers, and especially without cooperation between the United States and China, you're never going to be able to confront the climate change issue in any adequate way. So while we're sitting around arguing about whether China should have one kind of computer chip or whether we're going to sanction one Chinese company or whether we're going to send another destroyer through the Taiwan Straits, the climate is changing and we're facing a global catastrophe. So we have lost the ability to deal with big global problems like terrorism or global pandemics because we're caught up in these disputes that simply make it impossible for us to make progress on great issues. And so that's climate change. The other really big looming threat that I don't think people have focused enough on is nuclear war. We are now moving into an age where discussing the use of nuclear weapons seems to be okay, like a reasonable option. And the nuclear weapons we have now are so far more destructive than any that were ever used in human history that any kind of a conflict like that risks all of humanity. But in order to prevent that from happening, we have to calm down, global competition and realize that it's in everyone's interest to cooperate. The only problem, or one of the big problems, the big obstacles to that is the American view that we know what's right. It comes from the American missionary ethos. It's now become missionary for our own idea of democracy, and we want to go out and change the world and redeem the world and transform it into a world that's in our image, whereas other countries are not caring, not trying to intervene in other countries' affairs. So it would require a great change in mindset for the United States to get to a point where we can deal fruitfully and internationally with some of these great looming challenges.
Every now and then you have a guest when you host a program like I do and have for all these years on TV and radio. When you get every now and then you get a guest where everything they say requires a bunch of follow-ups, and it's just hard to keep up. Stephen is just pushing me, and I suspect and hope pushing you to rethink your assumptions about the world that we live in, and it makes for a fascinating conversation, but it makes for a frustrating conversation because everything he says is worthy of digging into. Let me just pause for a second, Stephen. You mentioned two issues now, these two looming threats, climate change and nuclear war. Let me just comment on both of those right quick and move forward. So it's taken me a while, as you'll hear in just a second. It's taken me a while, even though I was trying to get to it. I could not find 3+ hours in any of my days to sit and watch Oppenheimer. I wanted to see the film so badly. It was on my list, but couldn't get around to it. I was on a long flight last week, and finally, courtesy of being stuck on a long flight with nothing else to do, I finally had a chance to sit and watch Oppenheimer. And I'm listening to you talk now about how much more dangerous these weapons are now than they were even then. And that's a scary thought. But I hear you loud and clear. Obviously, don't at all disagree with you. But just thinking again about how concerned and scared they were then, we're in the era of Oppenheimer, and where we are now, all these years later, with nuclear weapons that are far more destructive than that, is really fascinating for me. And again, as I said, sort of scary to think about. On the climate change issue, I just announced yesterday on this program. So for those who didn't hear it, we'll share it again with you right now. You'll be hearing more about it between now and June. You know that for years I have routinely moderated these national conversations on C-SPAN about a variety of issues, particularly as they relate to the African American community. I haven't done it for a few years, but I just announced yesterday that we are going back live on C-SPAN for an international conversation about what I would call, quoting Dr. King, the urgency of now. And the urgency of now, as Stephen Kinzer just laid it out, is climate change. Climate justice, climate equity, climate resilience, but particularly as it relates to the communities of color, namely African American communities and poor communities, who are disproportionately impacted by these climate maladies, these climate catastrophes. And so we announced literally yesterday on this program, here comes Stephen Kinzer now making it one of his two towering and looming threats. But we announced yesterday that on June the 18th, make that Tuesday, mark your calendar right now, Tuesday, June 18th, 7 to 10 prime time on the East Coast, 7 to 10 Eastern time. On June 18th, I will be moderating an all-star panel of nothing but people of color, primarily African Americans, as we talked about the impact of climate on the black community, or as Dr. King would say, the beloved community. Never has this country ever seen a conversation with a stage full of nothing but people of color talking about these issues about which we have been far too quiet, even as we are the victims of these issues. More about that later, but since Stephen mentioned it, I wanted to share that in case you missed that announcement yesterday. Once again, June 18th, 7 to 10 Eastern Time, 6 to 9 Central Time, 4 to 7 Pacific Time. We'll be live on C-SPAN with an all-star panel in the coming days. We'll tell you more about all the big names who will be convened with us for that conversation on C-SPAN, talking specifically about one of these two looming threats that Stephen mentioned a moment ago. Stephen, let me just, I'm watching my time here. Let me just pivot here because I think this question is probably appropriate right about now as I'm looking at what's in front of me. We'll get to Biden and ICC and his comments yesterday. But in this particular moment, given these two looming threats you've just laid out, and given the shift in the center of global power, and given how we see ourselves and our image and that missionary ethos you spoke of, all the stuff you've just said, in a moment like this, and I'm not talking just specifically about Joe Biden or Donald Trump, I want to get more broad than that, more philosophical if you can, but what kind of leader in this American moment, given all that you've laid out thus far, and I still got a half hour to go, what kind of leader is that crisis begging for? American leader in a moment like this?
I think one of the reasons that the world situation and the situation in the United States looks so dangerous now is that our political system doesn't seem adequate to deal with the challenges that we're now facing. I don't think the founders ever thought about the immense impact of money in politics, what it would mean for changing our institutions. When I was growing up, I was taught that the two greatest inventions of Americans were the Constitution and jazz. I still feel that way about jazz.
I knew you were going to say that. I was waiting on it.
I'm feeling that for various reasons, our political system is failing. A political system that succeeds, among other things, is a system that attracts the best people in the country to look for leadership positions. But now, nobody could argue that the elite and the smartest and the brightest and the best people in America are our leaders. So you asked, what kind of a leader would we want? Well, I looked at Biden and Trump, and one thing a lot of people talk about is their age, and I think that's a very legitimate concern. But what I think is even worse than their calendar age is that their ideas are so old. They're rooted in another reality. Joe Biden is a product of the Cold War. So is Donald Trump. We need a leader now who can lead us into a new world, who's not the prisoner of the past, who's not going to make it his life or death duty to maintain American power in the world, but who instead will continue to put American interests first, as every American president should do, but would stop and think about what really is good for America in the long run, and not do things that make us feel good for a little while, but actually wind up not only harming the target countries, but undermining our own security. I'd like to see a leader who can visualize that kind of world.
If every guest were like Stephen Kinzer, my life would be a whole lot easier. I've got some great guests coming up today. Walter Mosley in our second hour, Dr. Todd Boyd in our third hour. So some brilliant talkers today. But good Lord, my life and my job would be a lot easier if you had guests who were this erudite to almost every single question that you ask him. Still worthy of interrogation, but erudite nonetheless. His name is Stephen Kinzer. You see why. He's the former New York Times foreign correspondent. He has a way of seeing the world, and I've got more questions for him when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former D.C. Mayor Vincent Gray is thanking George Washington University for awarding him an honorary doctorate in public service. Gray posted a picture of himself on stage in a wheelchair being honored by the university on social media. Gray studied psychology at the university and graduated in 1964. He was the first African American to be admitted to the GW fraternity system. Dozens of tornadoes could be possible throughout the day today and into tonight, particularly across Iowa and into northwest Illinois and southwest Wisconsin. It's part of a severe weather outbreak forecast across the plains and Midwest, bringing the risk of dangerous thunderstorms from northern Missouri into Wisconsin. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and VINnews.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. If you're like many people, you may think custom blinds is a job for expensive professionals. Well, at Blindster, if you have a tape measure and a screwdriver, you can install our custom blinds and save big. Plus, we guarantee they'll fit. Blindster.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Lakers fans may not like what they're about to hear, but I need to warn you about something. There are NBA sources everywhere who believe former Clippers guard J.J. Redick is emerging as the frontrunner for the Lakers head coaching vacancy. J.J. Redick, the guy you occasionally see on ESPN working as an NBA analyst. Redick has never coached in high school, college, or the pros. He got into broadcasting after retiring in 2021. So how is Redick a candidate for one of the most prestigious jobs in sports? 2 months ago, Redick started hosting a podcast with LeBron James called Mind the Game. It's a chat where Redick and LeBron talk about the X's and O's of basketball. This podcast and Redick's association with LeBron is the only reason Redick's name is connected to the Lakers coaching search. Stay tuned on this situation. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
The thing no one tells you about periods is that your flow changes every day, and so should your tampon size. Tampax has 5 absorbencies to match your changing flow. If it hurts to remove, go down a size. If it leaks, go up a size. Only Tampax has a leak guard braid to help give you up to 100% leak and odor-free protection. All-day comfort and protection for under $5 a month. Based on average U.S. consumer usage at manufacturer suggested price. However, pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer. Excludes 8-count packs.
My friends swim no matter the season, but my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis can sometimes take me out of the moment. Now, thanks to Skyrizi and clear skin, count me in. With Skyrizi, Risankizumab Riza, a prescription-only 150 milligram injection for adults who are candidates for systemic or phototherapy. 3 out of 4 people achieve 90% clear skin at 4 months.
Don't use if allergic to Skyrizi. Serious allergic reactions and an increased risk of infections or a lower ability to fight them may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check for infection and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms such as fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough, or if you plan to or recently received a vaccine.
Thanks to Skyrizi, there's nothing on my skin, and that means everything. Ask your doctor today about Skyrizi, the #1 dermatologist-prescribed biologic in psoriasis, and visit skyrizi.com or call 1-866-SKYRIZI to learn more.
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
More of Tavis Smiley and Stephen Kinzer coming your way right now. Stephen Kinzer, former New York Times foreign correspondent. And what a rich conversation this has been thus far. I'm ready to go for the rest of the hour in this dialogue with Mr. Kinzer. Stephen, the reason why I asked you moments ago what kind of leader this moment demands, given all that you've laid out about the condition of the world and the role that the U.S. will play in it in the months and years to come, if we get there, to quote one Stephen Kinzer, if we get there. The reason I asked you that question is because you had previously said that the ultimate question in this moment and as we move forward is whether or not, as the world changes, as the center of global power shifts, whether or not the U.S. is going to recede and share, or whether we will fight to the end with this notion of, as you put it, always being the one to give the orders. So how are we going to see our role on the world stage in the years to come? That is not disconnected from the kind of president we will have, or presidents we will have into the future, and that's why I raised that question. Let me talk specifically, having said that, about Joe Biden in this American moment. We all saw the news. You've all seen over the last 24 hours or so. It's this story is still developing, but the ICC, the International Criminal Court, is seeking arrest warrants for top Israeli officials and Hamas leaders, saying that they have both engaged in behavior that is unacceptable. President Biden then came out pretty aggressively and denounced this move by the International Court, calling it outrageous. That's his word, an outrageous implication of equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Stephen, just tell me quickly here how you read this issue and President Biden's response.
I actually have a fantasy of what I would love to see happen, what I'd love to see come out of this indictment.
All right.
And it takes me back to some historical moments. I'll mention one in particular, if you just bear with me for a moment.
Sure.
This is a story that happened in the years after the Armenian genocide. In 1921, a group of Armenian commandos figured out that Talat Pasha, the organizer of the Armenian genocide, was living in Berlin. And they organized a plot to assassinate him. And he was assassinated. But the key to the plot was that they wanted the assassin not to run away. They said, we want you to stand there and be arrested. And when you put on trial, we're going to put on trial everything that the Ottomans did, the whole Armenian genocide. And that's exactly how it worked out. And the guy was actually acquitted because they provided so much evidence of the wrongs that had been committed. So here's what I get out of that. I would love to see the leader of Hamas show up in The Hague voluntarily and say, okay, you think I'm a criminal? Let's have a trial. Let's lay out everything that's happened for the world to see. And I think this would really be a way to turn around what seems to be a kind of a predatory attitude on the part of some people in the world and turn that International Criminal Court into a stage where the entire history of this conflict can be laid out and the world would be able to see in a forum that it's never been able to use before how this whole story plays out on a world scale. So in my fantasy, the Hamas leader gives himself up and says, okay, let's have a trial and let's the world see what has happened. And in that case, I think the world would see a lot more than it's being allowed to see now.
I was just about to go there. Let me probe your fantasy. It is strategically brilliant, albeit a fantasy. If, in fact, that were to happen, how do you think the entire world community would then see this issue once all the evidence was laid out?
It's particularly interesting because, of course, the other side, Netanyahu, those people won't show up. Yet the trial will unfold. So I would like to see something a little bit similar to the trial that happened about the guy who killed the perpetrator of the Armenian genocide. They bring in victims. They use stories. They use historical documents to show what happened. It was the first time people in the world got to see from the Armenian perspective what they had suffered. And I think that's what this would be. You'd bring in a whole series of experts plus individuals who could trace the history of their suffering in that part of the world. And I think it would be an unparalleled forum for a learning moment on a global scale.
So House Speaker Mike Johnson has described the ICC's efforts as baseless and illegitimate. Those are his words, baseless and illegitimate. President Biden, again, has called this a false equivalency, called it outrageous. Why do I mention those two names? To make the point very simply that whether you're talking about the Democrats or folk on the left, the president ain't buying it. And if you talk about folk on the right, as high up as the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, they ain't buying it. So I guess the question is, what legitimacy in the minds of American officials, at least, does this court have, and what do you make of the fact that left or right, ain't nobody buying it, Stephen?
It's really bizarre to watch the twists and turns the United States is making about the International Criminal Court. First of all, of course, we're not a party to it. We refused to join. But then we came up with this idea that we could use it to indict Putin as a war criminal so he can't travel anywhere. And the United States applied intense pressure on the International Criminal Court to issue that warrant. Nobody on the other side was ever investigated, but a warrant was issued for Putin as a war criminal. This was a huge success for the United States, and there was all this glowing propaganda in the U.S. about how the International Criminal Court, this body that's above all pressures, even that body recognizes how evil Vladimir Putin is. Now, suddenly, we don't like the criminal court anymore. It is so cynical. We either should accept it as an independent body whose views we respect or not do so. But the way we do it and the way we treat the pronouncements of this tribunal are exactly reflective of the way we look at the whole world. That is what's called the New World Order, or the rules-based international order. It's we make the rules and we give the orders.
Let me ask you, I got just a short amount of time for this answer. We can continue when we come forward. And I'm, again, not naive in asking, and you're right, but why? Why? You've been a reporter for all these years covering these issues around the globe. Why are we so cynical? There's a distinct difference, as you know, between skepticism and cynicism. You didn't say we're skeptical. You said we're cynical. That's a damning indictment. But why are we so cynical, Stephen?
I think part of it is a sense that we know best. This is something that has been ingrained in our history, a sense that the United States has now reached the pinnacle of development that has taken civilization thousands of years as we've tried to figure out what's the right way to govern ourselves. Now that we've finally found it, it would be so churlish of us to hold it to ourselves. So we need to export it, and the people who most need to learn our systems and our forms of government are those people who are so blind and backward that they don't even realize they need our help.
Rarely do you get a conversation with someone who has operated at the highest levels of American media, the New York Times no less, their foreign correspondent no less. And they have not become so cynical in their reporting, in their work and their witness, that they can't even speak truth to power, or for that matter, to the powerless. Not the case with Stephen Kinzer, which is why I'm delighted to have him as a guest on this program. Right now, more of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
I feel occasional burning and stabbing in my hands as I age.
I sometimes feel numbness and tingling in my feet as I get older.
It's starting to get in the way of doing what I love.
At Nervive, we hear you, and we can help. Nervive's clinically studied dose of alpha-lipoic acid reduces occasional nerve discomfort in as little as 7 days with continued daily use.
Now that I know, I'm taking control.
Try Nervive Nerve Relief and say yes to healthy nerves. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Sometimes I struggle to get to sleep. My body stopped for the day, but my mind is still running. So I take ZzzQuil.
ZzzQuil, the world's #1 sleep aid brand, has a range of non-habit-forming products to fit you and your family's needs. Invest in a great night's sleep for the best you tomorrow.
I'm awake and ready to take on anything.
Better days start with ZzzQuil nights. Explore our products at ZzzQuil.com. Use as directed. Keep out of reach of children.
KBLA Talk 1580 is the fastest growing talk radio station in Southern California. Home to 50,000 watts and an audience reach of 12 million listeners. KBLA Talk 1580 is a pioneer for black audio content, including our groundbreaking $2 million climate justice campaign and the most loyal, influential audience. According to an independent research study by the polling firm Aviterus, for the second consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 is the most trustworthy, reliable, and credible news source for black audiences and beyond in Southern California. Let KBLA Talk 1580 power your advertising dollars. Our omni-channel custom marketing solutions are specifically tailored to connect with your ideal target audience. We leverage audio, podcasts, streaming, digital, social media, and local activations to get your message out to the black community. Get in touch with our advertising team today at advertising@KBLA1580.com. That's advertising at KBLA1580.com. KBLA 1580. We've got you black. Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
It does indeed. Even as I'm running out of time here, a couple other things I want to get Stephen Kinzer's take on in case you've just tuned in. Our guest is, first of all, in case you've just tuned in, you've missed a great conversation. Check out the podcast later when it's posted of this live conversation. But Stephen Kinzer, of course, former New York Times foreign correspondent. Stephen, we've all been reading about this. I'm not sure the connections have been made for why it should or does matter for this particular audience. But Iran's president, we saw die in that helicopter crash the other day. What's that mean for the U.S.?
I hope that the United States doesn't seek to jump into this situation somehow and try to manage it in a way that ultimately will come back and boomerang toward us. You know, Iran is probably the most misunderstood country in the world, certainly in the United States. It has a very literate and advanced population. Actually very hip, very internet-oriented, very worldly, very sophisticated, and it's ruled by this backward regime that doesn't even want to let women out of the house without covering themselves in these black sheets. So you've got this terrible contradiction in Iran. Now, the United States is largely responsible for setting in motion the series of events that has created this terrible situation in Iran. And it's a great example of how the United States acts in the world. We often act to resolve an immediate problem without thinking about the long-term consequences. So in 1953, the United States, outraged at Iran's nationalization of its oil wells, organized a coup That destroyed the last democratic government that Iran ever had. That was in 1953. We then put the Shah back in power. He ruled with increasing repression for 25 years until the uprising that we call the Islamic Revolution of 1979. That produced a new clique of Iranian leaders who were bearded mullahs who have spent decades spewing anti-American propaganda and acting against American interests, sometimes very violently, all over the world. So this is an example of how when you intervene violently in the affairs of another country, you're doing something like releasing a wheel at the top of a hill. You can let it go, but you have no control over how it bounces or where it ends up. So Iran's tragedy traces back to the destruction of Iranian democracy in 1953 in a coup that the U.S. staged because we were angry about Iran not wanting to share its oil with us on terms that we liked.
No, your answer to that question just underscores yet again the danger and the proclivity that we have in this country for discussing issues in real time as if there is no backstory, as if there is no history. And it's arresting to hear this time and time again when you watch these conversations or participate in them, as I do every day, that people have no regard for how we got to where we are right now in the first place. I digress on that. In our remaining moments with Stephen Kinzer, we'll talk about Haiti. There is a bill introduced now in Congress that is proposing a 10-year, $50 billion development plan for Haiti. We'll talk about that when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 believes in community empowerment. LA's 99 neighborhood councils form the grassroots level of the Los Angeles city government. The system was created to connect LA's diverse communities to City Hall. While neighborhood council board members are volunteers, they are also public officials elected to office by the members of their community. Neighborhood councils advocate on issues like homelessness, housing, land use, emergency preparedness, public safety, parks, transportation, and sustainability. They also provide local expertise on the delivery of city services to their various communities. Neighborhood councils are open to participation by anyone who is a part of the fabric of daily life in said community. This includes those who live, work, or own property or a business. If you are interested in stepping up to join your local neighborhood council, visit www.empowerla.org. That's empowerla.org. It's time to think globally, but act locally. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Watch out! You got me!
The galaxy is safe once again.
In the pretend universe, kids play with pretend guns. In the real world, it's up to us to make sure they don't get their hands on a real gun. If you have a gun in the house, keep it locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
Tips to help improve your credit score in 2024. Establishing credit is an important key to achieving financial health, but building a credit history from scratch can feel challenging since you need credit to build credit. First, what does it mean to build credit? All consumers have a score between 300 and 850. You want your score to be as high as possible as lenders look at your credit score to make loan and credit decisions. A good credit score shows you have a track record of borrowing money responsibly. Remember, it's never too late to build or rebuild your credit. This segment is sponsored by J.P. Morgan Chase & Company.
Smart talk for curious people just like you. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Stephen Kinzer, former foreign affairs correspondent for the New York Times. About 3 minutes left here with Stephen in this conversation that I've enjoyed immensely and learned a great deal from. Been challenged by my own thinking. I say all the time that this program at its best challenges us to re-examine the assumptions that we hold. It helps us to expand our inventory of ideas, and Stephen Kinzer has done that quite well in this hour. Stephen, I mentioned earlier, right quick, there is a proposal that 3 congressmen have put forth in the House that is essentially a 10-year, $50 billion development plan for Haiti. And speaking of just not knowing the history, not being mindful of the backstory, Haiti is another example of it, just like Iran, is it not?
Haiti has been on the receiving end of American tutelage for 200 years, and can't tell Haitian history without talking about American intervention going all the way back, at least to Woodrow Wilson sending the Marines in there. So poor Haiti has suffered quite a bit at the hands of the outside world. Now, when I hear there's something about a $50 billion 10-year program, I kind of roll my eyes and think that this is the kind of top-down gift from the outside, which is actually no gift at all. I'm wondering how many Haitians were actually involved in the creation of this $50 billion plan? And if so, if there were Haitians, were they those who simply want to promote American interests in Haiti, like being sure that foreign investment is protected and that there are no excessive subsidies for food or for transportation? Or are these Haitians who come from real grassroots organizations? I've watched American aid in many countries, and often I see that the United States partners with or even creates organizations on the ground that actually support what the U.S. wants in exchange for getting money from U.S. organizations, and then ignores organizations on the ground. So I have a lot of skepticism when I hear about another multi-billion-dollar, multi-year Haiti rescue project. Let's try to ask the Haitians for a change what they think they would like, rather than coming to them with a big gift wrapped in paper that actually is quite toxic.
One of many mic drop moments that Stephen Kinzer has given us in this 1 hour conversation. Trust and believe, I've got more questions. I just ain't got more time, so we'll do it again. Stephen Kinzer, former New York Times foreign correspondent. As always, sir, enjoyed this immensely. I will talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your day.
It was great to be with you, Tavis. Thanks.
Thank you for your time. When we come forward, 2 great hours in front of us. Up next, Walter Mosley, the 16th installment of this Easy Rollins Mystery Series. We'll talk about that. And then our 3rd hour, Rappers Deluxe, How Hip-Hop Made the World, with the notorious Ph.D., Todd Boyd. 2 great hours in front of us on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 15.